Joining me today is a guy who doesn't like Nazis or Antifa, and is also the host of the Dogma Debate podcast, David Smalley. Finally, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've been trying to make this happen for a couple months.
We have.
You were riding here on your motorcycle.
Yeah.
You burned your finger. You were my first guest to, I think, to be in physical pain. I put some people through mental pain, but I think you're my first injured guest.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was a little warmer today than I thought it was going to be. And I pulled over to take my jacket off and roll it up, and I was trying to stuff it into the saddlebag and burned my finger on my own exhaust. So right there, your viewers will know my level of intelligence.
There's some sort of metaphor there. You burned your fingers on your own exhaust. Doesn't that, it sounds like
there's something there.
There's something deep there.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of on my way to interview Richard Dawkins for my podcast.
Yeah.
I had a motorcycle accident. Like someone pulled out in front of me and I slammed into him on the way. I still made it and did the interview. But yeah, there's something going on. Anytime I'm going to go do something that I really enjoy doing, something's trying to stop me.
Yeah, what's going on there?
What's going on up there?
Be someone upstairs looking at you, judging you?
No,
what?
absolutely
not. That?
No chance.
I think we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit. How long you been doing the motorcycle thing?
Almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
So well, I mean, I rode dirt bikes for 7-8 years as a kid. I actually rode a dirt bike before I could ride a bicycle.
Really?
My dad taught me to ride to balance on two wheels on a motorcycle. So.
Huh.
Yeah,
Is that what made you an atheist right there?
No, reading the Bible is what made me an atheist.
Yeah. All right, so let's start there. So sure. For people who don't know you at all, so you host a show called Dogma Debate. I've been a guest on the show. We do very sort of similar thing. You actually are one of the people that I think is trying to get some answers. You're not trying to be a judgmental prick. How's that for a compliment?
Yeah, thank you.
That's pretty much the greatest compliment I can give.
Nowadays it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's what I've done.
Yeah, you're trying to explore some things, and you're willing to talk to people you agree with and disagree with, and all that stuff. But your backstory is pretty interesting because you are an atheist now, but you grew up as an evangelical Christian.
Dude, I was in the music ministry.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I was in the music ministry. I was a drummer, usually for all black gospel churches. Now, if you've never listened to that music, you're missing out. I still love it. I still enjoy it. The all black choirs. Oh man, there's something about it. I mean, it's uplifting, it's awesome. The message is positive, there's a lot of fun there. Mm-hmm. The music's more like a blues and funky, jazz-oriented sort of style. When I did play a few times for the white churches, it was so boring. They didn't want me to use regular sticks, they wanted me to use the little nylon brushes. And no, the black churches let me go all out. They had a bass guitarist and keyboard, and those were some of the greatest times of my life. I was a part of the ministry. And then my pastor had me go door knocking, and to tell people about Jesus Christ. And I'm on my mission doing this. I say mission, I wasn't Mormon, but I was on my mission of winning souls. And I knocked on this lady's door and I said, I'd like to talk to you about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And she said, honey, you need Jesus. And slammed the door in my face. And standing there staring at her door, I thought, what if she's right? What if she has the right version of Jesus, and I'm walking around this neighborhood telling people something that's not true?
Yeah. How old were you at this point?
I was about 17, 16-ish, somewhere around there. And so maybe 15, maybe a little younger. And I remember thinking, what if I'm leading people away from Christ? And so, it's actually started when I was baptized. I thought, I'm not good enough to be a Christian. I better figure this stuff out. Like, they've given me the uniform and sent me out on the field, and I don't know any of the plays. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know if I have the truth. And so I started thinking, how do I know my little small town in Texas, that church, we're the ones going to heaven and everyone else has it wrong?
Yeah.
How do I know, right? And what if that lady's right? What if I need Jesus and she has the right version? So I thought, you know what? There's a lot of confusion around this. I want to get so close to God that I can solve these problems. I want to make sure I can lead people the right way. And so I started literally reading the Bible cover to cover. I talked with theology professors. I talked with pastors. I talked with friends who were Christians. And I got so close, I saw that there wasn't one, and that this book is very much left up to interpretation. And then I started sort of going, all these people who claim to believe, have they asked these questions? How do they know they have the right version of Jesus? And it was a 14-year journey for me. This was not, I had a traumatic event in my life, so I threw up my hands and said, God, why do you... I didn't have a Lieutenant Dan moment, you know what I mean? I was like, screw you.
Right.
It was much more of an intentional process of, I want to know God. I want to be close to God. I didn't feel good enough to be a Christian.
Right. But if we got you on a boat in Louisiana during a storm, we could get you to have a Lieutenant Dan moment.
Maybe so.
Maybe, possibly.
Maybe so. I was probably cursing at, I don't know, Thor or something in that moment.
Right. So it's interesting, though, because your evolution out of religion was through reading religious texts, where I think a lot of people have a sort of leap of faith moment, but rarely does that have to do with reading text. You know what I mean? The people that are even becoming more religious, they have that leap of faith, whatever that personal experience is for them. But I wonder how many people actually read the full text and go one way or the other.
Yeah, I think
meaning that you were informed about what you were doing, and I think a lot of people just kind of check out either way. They make a decision without necessarily reading everything.
I think most atheists that I've talked to, and I've had my show for almost 6 years, I've talked with tons of atheists, although I try to make my show mostly about talking with believers and people who I would fundamentally disagree with. But I would say most people who get into the faith do it because of a mentor in their lives. There's some pastor or preacher or some charismatic leader who will use a Bible verse and say, here's a teachable moment. And they use that Bible verse, and then they talk about it or do a sermon on it in some way that you leave there feeling, oh, wow, that was speaking directly to me. Well, the reason you feel that is not because the Bible itself was speaking directly to you. It's because the charismatic, trained preacher used that Bible verse as a motivational speech ignition. And so that's what it really turns into. So whenever you leave church feeling good, it's on purpose. But if you go back and read all of the verses, especially the ones the preachers skip over, that's where you start to go, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like this loving God I thought I was worshiping. So that's where it started to break down. I think people will convert into religion for mostly emotional reasons, but I would say for the most part, people who leave the faith do so informed as I did. I think they start looking into it and going, this doesn't add up to this. Is there a scientific answer for what I used to think was metaphysical? And then they get informed in science and then go, wait a minute, it's not that I don't like God, it's that God is irrelevant. We don't need God in order to answer a lot of these questions. And I don't know is still okay.
I normally don't offer my guests a guest in the middle of the show, but have you had Andrew Klavan on by any chance?
I have not.
So I'm going to connect you with Andrew Klavan. He's a really interesting guy. Born Jewish, then was an atheist most of his life, and then became Christian. And talk. So I think you'd have a.
Is he here in LA?
He's here in LA. He's a multiple-time guest on the Rubin Report. I'm gonna kick him over to you.
I would love that.
I usually do more politics with him, so I think we've done some of that, but I think you'll dig it. So when you had this awakening, so to speak. Can people describe it as an awakening? If it's an awakening to
I'm fine
non-belief?
with that. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So when you had that awakening, had the family take it? Like, what was it like for you first? Like, were you like, oh man, was I following a lie? You know,
at first, I was reading online, and I found my first atheist online. And it was Frank Zindler. For people who don't know who he is, look him up. He speaks a million languages. The guy's brilliant. He's awesome. And he was doing a radio debate. This was a transcript from a radio debate in 1989. And it was with a Christian geologist. And he's an atheist geologist, and they were debating Noah's flood, this idea that there was actually a real flood. And he said something, it's so funny that this is something so small. He asked the guy, and I was just reading the transcript because this was in early 2000 or late 90s that I was reading this. It was at least 10 years old. He asked the guy, he said, why did God only save the land animals in the flood? And the Christian geologist had no answer for it. And then Frank said, well, you do realize that that amount of fresh water falling into the oceans would have diluted the pH levels to the point that marine life would have died too. So why didn't God tell us to save the marine life as well? And he said, unless, of course, the entire story is fabricated and those people didn't know the difference between ocean water and rainwater. And that, I just thought, how come no one's ever thought of this? And so that was like an aha moment for me, and I just went, it was kind of like a boy raised by wolves seeing his first human going, oh, that's what I am. That's why none of this stuff makes sense to me. Yeah. That's why I can't lick my own privates. My body doesn't work that way, you know. And so
you can try.
You can try, and some talented people, I'm sure, can accomplish it, but the average person can't. Yeah. And so that, that's what I'm like. That was my moment. I felt relieved. I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I finally just felt I'm not alone. There are other people out there that question this stuff. And so when I first told my mom, I never said I'm an atheist. I said, I'm not a Christian anymore. I just casually told her over the phone, and she was like, well, why not? And I said, I've just been reading a lot of the Bible. Have you read this verse? Have you read that? She's like, no, I never read that. And I went, okay. And I just left it at that. And she didn't offer a whole lot of pushback. And I'm one of the lucky ones. Some people get thrown out of their homes, their college education cut off. They're not allowed to talk to their families anymore. Leah Remini's doing this thing on Scientology where people are literally cut off from their families. Jehovah's Witnesses are very similar. They won't let you talk to people outside of the cult. It's really, divisive. And so when my mom started to complain about how churches were doing this, I knew the Bible very well, and I just said, Mom, listen, in the Bible, in Matthew 10:34, Jesus says, do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace. I came to bring division, to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother. A man's enemies will be those in his own household. I said, so regardless of what denomination one picks, Jesus is successful at dividing families. And we have this commandment, you shall honor your father and mother. Luke 14:26 says, if you don't hate your mom and dad, you can't be my disciple. So he was a cult leader leading people away from their families, just like Jehovah's Witnesses, just like David Miscavige with Scientology. They're leading people away from their families and trying to divide. And I'm more about bringing people together with humanism than dividing based on religion.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because although I haven't read all three of them cover to cover, the New Testament is actually, I'm pretty sure it's by far the most peaceful of the big three, right? Of the Old Testament, the Quran, and the New Testament. The New Testament's probably the most peaceful, but yet
there's still
you're
quite
pointing
a bit,
out to, quite a bit.
Well, there's still quite a bit of horrible things in there. Romans 1:26 through 32 still says gays are worthy of death, and anyone who supports gays are worthy of death. This is New Testament. It mentions, Ephesians says, slaves obey your earthly masters. So we still have an approval of slavery in the New Testament. And the New Testament is also where Jesus is saying, if you don't hate people, you can't follow me. If you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. He's very much a violent cult leader. You know what I mean? So the New Testament does have some, the greatest commandment of all, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemy, feed your enemy. But that runs contradictory to a lot of the other verses in there.
So when you talk about this stuff, now you know that my audience is pretty much all over the spiritual map, the secular map, the political map, all of that.
Really? I thought you were a conservative shill.
I mean, for an alt-right maniac.
An alt-right, Nazi-sympathizing conservative shill. That's what I read.
Well, I'm pretty sure we're in some of the same Nazi lists these days.
Are you telling me that there's stuff on the internet that's not true?
Can you believe that?
I don't believe it.
It's nuts. It's really nuts. So my audience, though, is all over the place in every way, and I love it. Sometimes people say, "Oh, Rubin's selling out for these people or that people." I'm like, it's completely the truth. I would not even know which way to sell out if I was trying to, which I'm not trying to, obviously. But I mention this because what I think is interesting is that I have a lot of people that are Christian conservatives that email me, and they'll say, they'll just be like, I never heard a liberal that was sort of tolerant of us. Because I do try to be tolerant of, I've had Christian conservatives on the show, and I try to be as tolerant of anyone as they will be of me. It's a two-way street, I think.
Sure.
So when my audience that's a Christian conservative out there is listening to this, they're going to be on their back heels, obviously, hearing some of that stuff. So how do you go about bridging that divide?
I bridge that with questions. I don't necessarily want to come at you and say, here's everything wrong with your religion. Let me just talk directly to them for a moment. I'll tell them, everything that you love about your religion, I love that too. The peace, the helping the less fortunate, the loving your neighbor, the accepting everybody. A lot of people think that when I say I'm an atheist or if I'm arguing against Christianity, that's what I'm trying to take from you. I'm not trying to take that. I want you to embrace that. I love that too. More than likely, the things that I dislike about your religion are things that you're not aware of that live within your religion. Things that are buried within your holy book that would make you uncomfortable. I just bring it to the surface and say, how do you reconcile a loving God with this, with the story of Job? We just did a whole podcast on the story of Job. I have quite a few now Christian followers on Patreon who are following me on Twitter, who support me on Patreon, and they want to come on the show and have discussions. And so I ask questions and bring things to light to say, how do you worship a God that said slavery was okay? And they'll go, oh, that was indentured servitude. Okay, except
that's not so great too. But
well, yeah, that's in there. But there's another part in there in Leviticus, I think it's 25:44 through 46, that specifically says you can buy Hebrew slaves from among you, you can pass them down to your children, you can own them forever as property. That's not indentured servitude. That's slavery. It talks about how often you can beat your slaves. So what I do is, how I bridge the gap is I ask the question, how do you walk around day to day being a good person and then justify horrific actions? To me, that's the embodiment of evil. You say, what is evil? You're an atheist. You have no basis for morality. Well, hold on. We do have human harm. We do have human flourishing. These are facts of reality. The mechanism by which to judge that, I would say, is John Rawls' veil of ignorance. Put yourself behind the veil to remove your own bias and decide, should rape be okay? Are you the victim or are you the rapist? Should poverty be okay? Are you the one in poverty or are you the billionaire? You can look at it and go, if I'm behind the veil of ignorance and don't know what I'm going to be on the other side, then you can make an unbiased, objective call on it. And so whenever I try to remove that piece of it, try to remove the bias from it, it really comes down to me going, there was a God at one point that said slavery was okay, that in 1 Samuel 15:3 told Saul to go kill infants. He said, go kill the babies, the nursing infants, go kill them. How do you as a good person say, I can't wait to get to heaven and worship that dude? How do you reconcile that? How do you
So in some ways, do you think it almost doesn't matter what's in the text specifically, it's only what people act on? So in other words, there's for however many Jews there are out there, there's not that many that believe in a literal interpretation of the Bible. There are probably less Christians right now that believe in a literal interpretation than maybe 20 years ago.
Right.
I think it's a little bit different right now with Islam and Muslims, just from those gross and racist Pew polls, that there is a disproportionate amount of people, but obviously not all and obviously not most, and all that stuff, that are believing in a literal interpretation. So in some ways, they can all have bad things, but it's really about how the people act on it, right? Like, because we all have those things where we pick and choose.
Sort of, because they also vote. They also teach their children that demons are watching them at night, and there's this huge chess game of struggle between good and evil, and that if you do something bad, the devil made me do it, and if you do something good, God gets the credit. I think there are things that are mental child abuse at some level. If you're telling a child that a devil and a Satan is watching them and interacting in their lives, you're inducing a mild form of psychosis, telling this child that there's this magical demonic creature participating in their lives, and you're really distorting their view of reality. And also, if you're teaching a child, that the earth is 6,000 years old and there was a giant flood and we don't have geological evidence for any of this, you're making it very difficult for when he gets in 7th grade and they go, yeah, all animals are connected through biological evolution. You're stunting his educational growth, and we need those kids. We need those kids as the engineers of the future. So it's not just about the behaviors. I think it's also about, I think what you believe still matters because we live in the same world.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Was that the first time you said all that?
I think so. Probably.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Maybe.
So let's do some definitions, just some basic definitions of things. Because I think when people talk about this, I know there's always confusion over atheism, agnosticism, and the rest of it. So let's just do, what does atheism mean to you?
A lack of a theism. You don't have a belief in a theology. You don't have a belief in a deity.
Yeah, and what does agnosticism mean to you?
Well, agnosticism, I would ask an agnostic, what God do you believe in? And they're going to say, I don't have a belief in a God. Well, congratulations, you're an atheist too. I think I would say, it's hard for me to say every, because I don't want to speak in absolutes.
Yeah.
But I would say the vast majority of atheists would technically be agnostic atheists, because agnostic deals with knowledge. Do you have all the knowledge, or are you without some knowledge? I'm without some knowledge. Are you?
A little bit.
Well, then we're both.
Every now and again, something gets on my desk. I'm like, I did not know that.
Well, there you go. So to some degree, you're agnostic and I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
Do you have a God you believe in? Well, no. I might say there's a possibility. With enough evidence, I'm willing to believe anything. If there's enough evidence there, why not? We're always willing to change my mind. So, I mean, I'm an agnostic who says I don't know. But when it comes to theism, I don't have a theism I believe in. I'm atheist. I don't have one.
Yeah, so an agnostic atheist, if someone said that's what Smalley is, you could accept that.
Sure.
Right?
It's just, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I know your feelings on all the labels, and we're going to get to some of the political labels anyway.
Sure, good.
But the reason I mention this is because so Peter Boghossian, has Pete been on your show?
I have.
Okay, so oh right, Pete I think originally connected us.
He connected us, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Pete's a great guy, and I think he basically takes that same approach to agnostic atheism. But I don't know if you happened to see this. So I went off the grid for August, and when I did this video, when I came back, I did a live stream. And someone just, I was just reading questions. Questions were just live coming in, and someone asked me something about my atheism.
Yes.
And basically, I said that while I was away, and I had some time, I was working on my book, and I took a little time off, and I wasn't looking at computers and phones and all this stuff, that something hit me that I didn't feel that the word atheist was quite appropriate to me anymore. Not that I believe in some magical thing that I can't prove. I simply do not. I never have, and I don't. Mm-hmm. But that I did have moments of sort of peace over the course of this 30 days where I just had this feeling of there could be something else out there, and I don't want to rule that out. Now, I don't think that's any different from anything that you just said there in any way. But I did get a lot of atheists pissed at me. I mean, there were a lot of people really pissed.
Let me ask you a
and it was,
question.
by the way, it was a very I was just reading the questions in front of me.
Oh, I know.
It was I wasn't prepared. I just said something off the top of my head, and I thought, man, I wish you guys could be as tolerant as you often say you are.
Yeah, by the time it got to me, it was a tweet that said your buddy Dave Rubin just joined some cult or something. Like I didn't realize you had joined a church, and I think they said Tucker Carlson was secretly a KKK member or something.
Oh, yes,
white supremacist. And so I sent you that text and was like, I had no idea.
Right.
That Tucker removes his hood to do a show, and you were now a church leader.
I didn't know that was connected to my one little 10-second comment on my
That's where that came from. And they sent me and then I said, do you have evidence of this? They sent me that clip, and I went, that's not evidence of him renouncing atheism.
Yeah, but so when you saw that, what did you think? And you are welcome to ask me anything.
Yeah, my question is, you being open to something being out there just means you're reasonable. Yeah. It just means you're open to evidence. That doesn't mean you now have a belief in a theism.
Right.
So you're still an atheist. So why wouldn't the word atheist still represent you?
So I think really what I was trying to say in that moment was that I think there's an association with the word. You know what I mean? I understand what the literal definition of atheist is, but I think that there's an association with the word that I don't know that I need that thrown onto me. We all get these labels thrown onto us all the time, and I think that can often shut down conversations, unfortunately, having nothing to do with what you actually really believe.
Yeah.
And I just felt that let's put it this way: if somebody was doing a talk show and they wanted to bring on an atheist to really talk about atheism, I actually think you would be a much better advocate for that than I would be. And that's really all that I meant. That I'm just giving room for some other stuff to be out there. And I know, again, that's not in conflict with anything you've just said.
I get that. I mean, when I meet someone for the first time, if it's my daughter's friends or someone in the community that I'm going to have to interact with, I'm a little hesitant at first.
Don't wear the
like,
atheist shirt,
I just don't go, hey, I'm an atheist. I don't do that. But because I know how that can make them a little like, ugh. So I do let them get to know me. And if they ask me about church, I'll say we're not religious. Mm-hmm. Or I'll throw something out there like that. Although out here in LA, it's way different than saying that in Texas. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
Pretty religious over there. So, but I'll say that I'll tend to hold off sometimes. But a public figure like yourself, where people already knew that you don't have a God belief, I think more of us should embrace the term, and sort of help normalize it, so that it's not something that's a bad word. You know. So when my daughter's 13, when she's 17 and tries to get a job at Jack in the Box, and they're asking her questions, and she mentions she's an atheist, I want it to be a so.
Big damn.
So what? And you also don't collect stamps. What's your point? Why are you? Who cares? That's what we're hoping for. As a secular activist, I want to work myself out of a job, and I want to get more into politics, and I want to get more into other dogmas out there. I call my show Dogma Debate for that reason. I didn't pigeonhole it to atheism because atheists have dogma too. Let's hash that out. Democrats have plenty of dogma. Republicans have dogma. Yeah. Let's hash those things out.
Well, that's the funny part to me, because I think I saw a little of that atheist dogma right there. So again, it was a very flip comment I made off something I wasn't really prepared or even had put much thought in to talk about publicly. It was just reading it live, and just the amount of anger. And again, it's Twitter, and we can't judge reality off Twitter and all that. But just the amount of people that were so angry that clipped it, and then were saying he's a sellout and all this stuff. And it's like, guys, all I was really saying was that I want there to be a little space for me to to play in another area, another intellectual area, another spiritual area to think about things.
I mean,
And
Sam
it's
Harris talks about spiritualism, and he's one of the most famous atheists
I read the book
in the world.
The book's right there.
Yeah.
Where is it? There it is. Waking Up, right there. It's
Right.
a guide to spirituality without religion. Yeah.
By an atheist.
Yeah.
So the fact that you want, and most Buddhists are atheists. They don't have a godhead they worship, but they're very religious.
Yeah.
You can be spiritual, you can be religious without having a godhead that you believe in. You're still an atheist.
Yeah.
You're just like, what atheist has become online, don't associate me with that.
I think maybe that also.
And you're also tying in a lot of regressives are atheists, but the vast majority of atheists are reasonable liberals like you and I, who are like, I'm a liberal, Antifa doesn't represent me, Nazis sure as hell don't represent me, but when we say the left or the atheists, that's sort of an overgeneralization of the broad scope. I think that may be what the Twitter attacks look like to you, but the loudest ones hardly ever represent the majority.
Yeah, no, I know they don't, and I thought it would be interesting to bring it to you specifically, because I know you're very much in this world. So you mentioned liberalism there. From everything that I pretty much know about you, you strike me as sort of an old school, classic liberal. What does liberal even mean to you?
Freedom, I think. Liberty. I think it means doing what's right because it's right, not because of votes or politics or pressure. And I think it just means being reasonable and letting people have their freedoms, as long as they're not hurting other people. It's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah.
Which is why it's mind-blowing to me that if I say, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't punch people who we disagree with, I'm then called a Nazi. Yesterday.
Yeah, well then you're obviously a Nazi defender.
Just yesterday, I was a Nazi defender. At the same time, someone on Twitter told me I was way too lefty for them, which I'm like, maybe you guys should talk and see which one of you are right.
Right. Well, when you're getting hit from both sides, it usually means you're doing something right. So
I guess so. I mean, I just want people to be reasonable. That's really all I want.
Yeah.
I want people to stop and think about what they're saying, what they're doing, and to come with evidence. That's really it.
Yeah.
I don't see why that's a problem for people. And then I'm called a fence-riding centrist. Have you gotten that one?
Well, I've noticed a new attack on centrists. Wait, by the way, I think I said classic liberal. It's obviously a classical liberal.
Oh.
I don't want to give anyone an opportunity to clip something and go, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Wow. They will anyway.
Even just an AL at the end of a word is an important. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I do see now a sort of new quasi-intellectual assault on the centrists. You see, they're the ones that are really creating the problem here.
Yeah, it's crazy. If I say, hey guys, we shouldn't, if conservatives are peacefully marching and you disagree with them, go march next to them, hold up a sign, protest them, but don't show up with shields and masks and smoke bombs and punch them. Let's not encourage violence. Let's not do that. And they're like, oh, so you're a Nazi sympathizer? And I say, well, no, I definitely don't agree with Nazis. I'm far more on your side than I am Nazi side.
Right.
And I disagree with them too, but I would like to beat their ideas with ideas, not with shields and fists. Can we be reasonable? Can we talk to them? And then they say, oh, you're fence riding.
Yeah.
You have no opinions on anything. Actually, I have opinions on both. I have double the opinions.
Yeah.
And I think both of you are out of your minds, and I want to have a call for peace. And it's crazy how much a call for peace seems to ignite so much violence.
Well, it's so interesting how politics is becoming a team sport. And now with everything that's going on with the NFL and the anthems and Take a Knee, all that, politics has now reached fully into sports. Like it's starting to infect every facet of society. I, as someone that cares about just the general good of society, I'm worried about that we're pinning ourselves off everywhere. There's going to be no place for refuge, basically. Where are you going to go to meet a stranger?
I'll tell you, the
and
Rubin
have
Report.
a conversation?
The Rubin Report. And Dogma Debate.
Yeah.
I think this is why our shows are gaining popularity like they are, is because people like the long-form, nuanced discussions. Yeah. And this is what we need, is the nuance. You don't get it on CNN. You get 8 seconds of how much can we make them fight, and then put up the NASCAR commercial so that it gets the most views.
You're telling me 16 boxes of people screaming at each other for 10 minutes, you're not going to walk away feeling good about that?
Not very helpful. And I got to say, this team sport thing that you mentioned, I want to touch on that for a second. Because whenever you did your interview on Tucker Carlson about the YouTube demonetization thing,
it's about a month ago.
I tweeted that. And immediately I started getting hate for tweeting anything with Tucker Carlson in it.
Yeah.
And then they flipped out because you were in it. And they were like, oh, wow, Tucker Carlson and Dave Rubin, atheism has jumped the shark. And immediately it just trash.
Literally had nothing to do with what we were discussing.
And I'm talking seconds after I tweet. Like the video was like a minute maybe or 40 seconds or something. It was just a very short clip. Like they literally haven't even had time to watch the video.
They never watch it.
And here they are just talking trash about the source. And then probably...
But what does that say about... So one of my frustrations, I think, in this has been that, and again, it's partly, I guess, because of the Twitter thing, but I see so much intolerance coming from the skeptic community, the atheist community. So someone like Tucker, for example, Tucker, who I'm sure if I was to whittle down all of our political positions, we would probably have plenty of disagreements. But I know that in the free speech battle and in the stuff that's going on college campuses and all that, he's been a major ally. When nobody would put him on MSNBC, when no one would put Brett Weinstein up from Evergreen State on MSNBC or on CNN, guess who put him on? Tucker. Yeah. Tucker had me on to talk about why I left the left. Tucker had me on to talk about the YouTube stuff. I mean, he's making allies in some of these places. Sometimes you got to find allies in places that you didn't expect.
Yep. No, you're spot on. And just the other day...
That ain't rocket science.
You're familiar with Sean King? Black Lives Matter activist?
Yeah, of course.
He tweeted something probably...
The white guy.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 days later, he tweeted something about crime statistics that I'd never seen before, and he linked to like the Department of Justice. And I went, oh, that's great. People need to see this. So I retweeted Sean King, and the flood from the other side was like, oh, I can't believe you're retweeting that SJW snowflake. I'm like, it's not about who he is, it's about the content he's sharing. And then just a few days later, I shared something from Beverly Hills Antifa, which is an Antifa spoof site. Yeah. But they had a real video, right, of an actual, I don't know if you saw it, of the woman, I believe she's Hispanic, yelling at the white Antifa kid.
Oh, I did see this.
Like, you're inherently racist, you're white. And he's like, I'm punching Nazis. And she's like, you don't, just punch and shut up, quit talking to them and punch them. And she's like, it's this weird inside of, and so I tweeted that and said, is Antifa now eating their own? Like, is this what's happening? And then I started getting so much flack for tweeting Beverly Hills Antifa. They just focused on the source. I'm like, did you watch the video? Yeah. I don't understand this team sport. I can't share Carlson and share Sean King and then share Beverly Hills Antifa. No. I'm not allowed to do that. Yeah.
Do you think that the people that actually care about building some bridges, care about tolerance and liberalism and all of those things, do you think in a weird way we're the least positioned to win this fight? Like, we've got the hysterics on both sides, right? So there's an authoritarian part of the left, obviously, there's an authoritarian part of the right. Now you have this, I do see a growing group of people, right, with what we're doing right now. Yeah. But that because we're trying to use logic and reason, we're not trying to rip everybody apart. We don't go after motives and motivation. We don't do personal attacks, all those things. That in a weird way, we're not set up to fight the way people fight these days.
That's a good point. And I think if we lose this, if we lose ground, it's going to be because of the silent majority. I think it's one of these weird situations where the majority of people listen to us and go, yeah, I'm right on board with that. But they don't want to speak up, because who wants to be known as a Dave Rubin supporter if all of your friends are extreme left? And who wants to say David Smalley has a point? Because all the crap I got for retweeting Sean King, if he tweets something else, I'll go, is it worth it?
You'll hesitate.
Even though he has good stuff, I'm like, is it worth it? Or if I see something from Beverly Hills Antifa, I go, is it worth it? The content stands alone, but they're not even going to pay attention to the content. So I intentionally force myself to do it because I think we deserve to win the fight. But I could see a lot of people out there that are the silent majority going, I totally agree with that. I'm just not going to click like or the heart because I don't want to be labeled as that Nazi sympathizer.
And by the way, to really drive your point home, if I had seen that you had retweeted Sean King, I probably would have rolled my eyes. Even if it was to a study that was even if it was to a totally legit study. I think he's just such a fraud and a bad player in this issue.
I don't agree with everything he does. But
but I probably, my own self, even knowing you, I would have been like, why'd Smalley bother doing that? So we all have our weaknesses.
It's good to take notice of that and to take your inventory and go, is that the logical way to go? Let me judge the content on its own. Don't just discount it because of who shared it.
So all this said, are you disappointed with the amount of sort of players that we have right now? I feel like I could count on maybe need 4 hands to get like the people that are really trying to cut through some of the bullshit. We need more. I don't know where they are. I'm trying to find them.
They're there. They're just being silent. And there's a lot to lose. I mean, for example, in my situation, I built my show over about 5 years with a certain base, a certain audience. That audience drives, depending on how many downloads we get, that's how the advertisers have to choose how much they're paying for, you know, so that's all financially tied. And then you have the private stuff, like the private membership stuff, the Patreon type platform, all that's tied together. And so once you do that full time, you know, as your job, and then you mention something like, oh, you know, maybe Tucker Carlson had a point on this, or maybe, and then you're labeled a Nazi, and then you see something happen on your social media, you go, oh my gosh, like that's a scary thought. That's why most of the people we see speaking up are professors. Yeah. They have their own full-time jobs, right? And this is just a side thing that they're doing. So I think if it wasn't so volatile, you know, more people would do it. People like you and I are just willing to take the risk. We're willing to go, this is my opinion. And if people don't want to support it, don't support it. You can always turn it off. You can always unsubscribe.
Are you amazed by those people who scream at you all day long? I'm always like, is someone forcing you to watch this? Are you all right? Yeah. If you're being held hostage, I'll call somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'll get a complete refund on the free show you just watched online. Yeah, it's amazing to me that they will demand change, refuse to support, and then when you say, well, if you sign up, you'll get it with no ads or you'll get extra bonus, you should give that for free too. Well, that costs money. Do you want to support the show? Wow, can't believe you're asking for cash. You're all about the money. It's crazy. It's like, you know, if someone came to your job and tried to force you to do it for free, how would you feel about it? You know, I kind of want to film this spoof video where I just go around to movie theaters and go, I'd like 2 tickets to Spider-Man, and they go, oh, that'll be $18.50. You're charging me for tickets? How dare you put that behind a paywall? I want to lose my mind and show that, you know, this is how people make a living. And so I think a lot of people are afraid because their bottom dollar is connected to that. They're scared to speak up. I've seen a dip in my income when I will say something bad about Antifa, or I'll not even bad about them, just disagree and go, guys, this isn't the way forward. I'll see a dip in my downloads. I'll see a dip in people not wanting to support me. And I go, I don't want the support of people who think punching folks is the nice way to move forward, or the best way to move forward. I don't want their support, but I do need to live. So I understand why some people are more hesitant. I'm just gonna keep moving forward regardless of how many people are supporting it, because one thing my mom did teach me all my life is do what's right because it's the right thing to do. Not because of reward or not because you're scared of punishment. Do right because it's the right thing to do, period. No religion necessary, just do right. And I don't think punching people we disagree with is right, no matter how vile and disgusting their opinions are. I'm gonna stick to that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like, I'm just doing what I think is right. That really is it. If I whittle down every other factor that's going on here, every other business decision, I'm doing what I think is right. There have been many times that has been at my own financial cost, but I'm willing to do that because I can survive and figure out what to do. You've had an interesting political evolution too, because I think it's sort of similar to what you were a lefty. I don't know, what do you consider yourself now? I think
I would say I'm left of center. I still consider myself part of the left, but I'm.
What does that mean? Even
I don't really know. Well, I would say that I'm a liberal. I had Adam Carolla on my show, and I was shocked at how much stuff we agreed on. He called himself a liberal, and I kind of joked with him about what I said. I heard you were a conservative shill, and he's like, well, let's go down the list. I support gay marriage. I think pot should be legal. I think whatever you do in your home should be up to you. I don't think the government should come in and tell you who to have sex with or what to put in your body. It was I'm like, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. The religious right, who wants to teach, Bible study in schools, and that's the opposite of me. I'm not a conservative. I think Betsy DeVos is one of the worst things that's ever happened to our education system. Most of Trump's appointments disturb me to a huge level. They're the right wing sort of. If you're an atheist, we don't want you. If you're Jewish, we don't want you. This is a Christian nation, like it or get out. That's the religious right that I would say I'm left of, right? But when it comes to, most political ideas, I would say I'm liberal. And that's why when you say I left the left, I go, I think the left is leaving us. Well, yeah. I think you're still a liberal, and I think I'm still a liberal, and I think if Antifa is the new left, then I'm being forced to be called center, but I didn't move.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still as reasonable as I was 3 years ago. But if the left is going off to say the new left is to punch a Nazi, yeah, I'm not there.
Right, and that's really where I'm at, because to me, and I've said this many times, that defending my liberal principles is becoming a conservative position. You know what I mean? Like the liberal things that you believe in, that's actually being defended by today's conservatives. By most estimations, Carolla is really a conservative, but yeah, he's defending those basic liberal things, where unfortunately what's happening with the left, to me it's being led by its worst pieces. So that a Linda Sarsour is the type of person that Bernie is out there defending.
Yeah.
And so who's the leader of the left? Now you can say the same thing about Trump, but ironically with Trump, he's not really in bed with the Christian conservatives. So it's a little harder to figure out, even though they voted for him at a very high level, he's obviously not one of them.
Well, the interesting thing about that point is that I don't think...
Maybe it's just a match made in hell, and that's much worse, actually.
Well, it's to me, it's more of an idea that conservatives, and I've always had this problem with conservatives, that they don't tend to actually espouse what are supposed to be conservative views. Meaning, we're for small government.
Yeah.
Okay, until a woman wants to make decisions about her own body, then they want to come into her bedroom and tell her, and her doctor, and say, you're not allowed to do this, or you must have a, what's it called, the internal sonogram thing, where they go in and forcing a woman to be penetrated with a machine before she can have abortion, because they want her to hear the heartbeat of, and just all this. You support this? The guy of small government? Oh, and then gay marriage? Yeah, I'm a married, straight, white male who's conservative, but you two guys getting married somehow affects me, so I'm going to stop you from doing it. They don't seem to really act the way they say they act. I mean, I would be for small government for the most part, but we do need some government positions. I think we should have some sort of single-payer healthcare system. I think we should have some sort of... I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be against the flat tax. I had a really close friend of mine who was a financial expert come on my show and sort of prove to me that it was a bad idea, but he said it could be done, but it was sort of a bad idea, and I went, okay, that makes sense.
I could be for a flat tax.
Yeah, but where the evidence leads, that's where I'm going to go. So when I say I'm left of center, it's really the religious right. It's the Pat Robertson, it's the Glenn Beck, it's the Donald Trump, the Steve Bannon. Those are the guys that I say I'm definitely left of that. But am I Linda Sarsour? Absolutely not. And I don't know where I am on the scale. Call me a centrist. I don't know. I think Pat Robertson and Linda Sarsour have some similar issues.
Yeah.
It may be.
That's the horseshoe theory.
Yeah. It's the horseshoe theory of at some point they're sharing the same delusion.
It's interesting because I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, because I do know how you feel about all the labels and all that stuff, and I obviously feel similarly. But I think it's important because it shows. To discuss it, it shows for the audience, they can go, all right, well, two people who are in it, who are living this, who talk about this stuff, are at the same time trying to play it out for themselves. And while everyone else is just screaming, this is what I am, this is what you are, that the average person just isn't. And that's what I'm trying to...
That's the silent majority. That's the silent majority. And I think a lot of times, and I've fallen into this trouble as well, I'll say the left. And I'll be like, oh, the left is... And I'm talking about the screeching, the people at the university yelling at the professor saying, put your hands down, that's a microaggression. Then he puts his hands down and they laugh at him. That if I'm going, oh, the left, which is why I've had to be careful about it, because most of my friends, and I would even consider you sort of still in that liberal section of, technically, I think you are center or left of center. I don't think you agree with most of the religious right or the Pat Robertsons or the Glenn Becks. You agree more with people in the center or liberal.
Yeah, I would split Glenn and Pat Robertson, but that's a whole other thing.
That's probably fair to do.
Because Glenn, I think, is much more of an actual libertarian he's gotten sort of crossed up in some of the religious stuff, but I actually, from at least my conversation with him, I sense that the libertarianism and the small government stuff was starting to override some of the religious stuff at some level. But by the way, not in all levels, because look what happened with him and Tommy Lahren over abortion. So
right, exactly. And by the way, that's another guy I would love to have on my show. Yeah, Glenn Beck, I think would be a perfect fit for my show.
I think you guys would have a great.
So just get out your Rolodex and let's.
You want everybody?
I want all of your guests.
You want my phone in the middle of this thing?
Let's just call them right now and make it happen. So I I think sometimes we make the mistake of saying the left, and Dennis Prager will do it and say the left, and then Adam Carolla gets on his show and go, the problem with the left, and then people like me feel disenfranchised by you and Dennis Prager, and like, guys, you're calling us Antifa. We disagree with them too, which then makes us turn to Antifa and go, dude, what the hell? Why are you acting like this? You're making liberals look crazy. And they're going, well, you're a Nazi supporting conservative. And so there's this infighting going on, and I'm like, wait a minute, time out. Donald Trump got elected president. The right should be eating itself. We should be sitting back, uniting, and going, let's watch the Republicans sort of eat their own. And then this idea, I say Republicans, hardcore right-wing conservatives like Steve Bannon and Donald Trump and you know, those guys, let's let them collapse and then go in there and be reasonable, classical liberals and put things back where they should be. But we can't now, because folks like Antifa are using fascism to prove that fascism doesn't work with their violence and control. And it's sort of like we're becoming this parody of ourselves. In the moment when we had that moment, this was our moment. Donald Trump being elected is the lowest the Republican Party has ever been. They're fighting each other. They don't like him. This is our opportunity to seize control, and we're wasting it on infighting. It's incredible.
And I actually think the ship has sailed. I did think, and I'm 99% sure I said this right after the election, I thought there was going to be a period of the left going, all right, let's figure out, did we miss something? Did we put too much on identity politics? Did we focus the wrong way? All of that. And yet I've seen virtually, and now when I say the left, I'm talking about the mainstream left, so the leadership of the party. You know? So I'm talking about Bernie and Ellison and Perez and the rest of them, that they've all doubled down on all of those things. So that's a case where I do say the left, and I'm not talking about Antifa. I'm talking about the mainstream modern left loves identity politics. The thing that I think could potentially destroy this country is what they're playing in. Now, people will listen to that and go, well, you see, he's defending Trump. That I did not say Trump.
No. And I think in that situation, I think that those are politicians who are terrified of losing their base. When I talk about downloads or Patreon or worried about losing funding, that's nothing compared to a politician losing votes. Yeah. So I think that's the unfortunate part about it.
Yeah. How passionate are you about politics in the first place?
Pretty passionate. Yeah. I do a lot of my shows about politics. Yeah. A lot of my shows we'll pull up sort of these types of issues and talk about them. I sort of split my show into two. Sometimes I'll have on a Christian, and it will just be a long conversation of me talking about the Bible, and then the next episode may be me just, with 3 or 4 different people hashing out political ideas like this. So.
Yeah. Do you find it easier right now to build bridges to the right? I mean, I know you've had Dennis Prager on. We've had a bunch of similar guests.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's where the left gets mad at me, and they go, he's becoming just like Dave Rubin. Here's the thing.
I didn't know so many people were angry at me. But
I get a lot of it because they know that I know you, and they feel like you're probably unreachable, and they can reach me. So they go, Dave Rubin, blah, and his stupid beard, and blah.
Stupid beard. They love the beard.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, they're angry at you. He went and got a beard and became Moses, and now he's a Jesus-loving cult leader, and that's who you've become.
Don't you wish that you could be as sort of calculating or as influential as people think that you are? You know what I mean?
That'd be great.
Like when I see people saying all this shit about me, I'm like, man, it's so not even in the realm of truth. I'm not just talking about like what they're saying, like just everything that you think about how I do things or why I do things. None of it has any bearing on reality.
No. It's this idea of what they think you've become. Yeah. And they fight against that. And then I'm telling you, I've said multiple times, I'm like, guys, it's really sad when I can sit down with a Christian in my studio who looks across from me and says, you have no basis for morality. And I respond with, I understand you feel that way, and I know you have a religious belief that tells you that. Let me tell you my objective moral standard and how I got there without religion. And we have a cordial conversation of them telling me I have no morality, and I'm telling them they believe in a delusion, but we're doing it in a respectful way. But the atheists on Facebook are being total dicks to me. And I'm like, guys, there's something wrong with our community. If I can have cordial conversations with conservatives and with Christians, and atheists are trying to eat me alive, something's not right. These are political differences, and it used to be. And I'll tell you, I've been in this movement 8 or 9 years now, almost 10 years. I'm telling you, it used to be that the Christians were the, nope, God is real. If you don't like it, get out. They didn't want to have the discussion. And the atheist community all agreed on, can we just talk? Can I just tell you my differing views? Can we disagree and still get along? Can we just talk about it? And now it's like, it's turning the other way around. The Christians are like, sure, I'll talk to you. And the other atheists go, yeah, but did you tweet Tucker Carlson? Well, then I hate you. Block. David's a Nazi.
You know, it's funny. You'll love this one. So I had Bishop Barron on. Have you chatted with him yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, so you've
add him to the list.
He'll be up. We're going to give you the master list. So Barron, he's from the Archdiocese here in LA. Yeah. When we had him on, I don't think he did, or I know for a fact now that he did not know that I was gay. Mm-hmm. He knew this was a home studio, but we talked about gay marriage and a bunch of other stuff, and he never. People were angry at me, like, how could you even bring him into your house? So I had people, this is sort of the left and the atheist being like, how could you even sit down with him?
Yeah.
But ironically, that wasn't the most interesting part. The most interesting part to me was that he told me, or his people told us after, the amount of hate he was getting from right-wing people saying, how could you sit down with Dave? And that's when I was like, man, this is without question the right thing to do. Because we sat here, did I think that I was gonna sit across from a guy that could be the Pope one day or something, who's very influential in the Catholic Church, and get him to be like, oh my God, I'm for gay marriage. Like, of course not, of course not. Right. But what I thought I could do is show him a human with a mind and some arguments. And by the way, I was a little more, even though none of his arguments changed my beliefs on anything, it was nice to just hear someone say what they think, yep. even if I saw the flaws in the arguments. But I thought the way that we each get hate, I just thought was particularly interesting.
Something happened similar with Brian Fisher. He came on my show, and people know Brian Fisher as just this monster who, he says things like the gay Gestapo, and every time he mentions gays, he talks about HIV, and he talks about, the Bible calls them beasts for a reason. Those aren't my words, that's the Bible. Yeah. I mean, he says some pretty vile things, but when I had him on, I went, you're a grandpa, right? Yeah. You have a master's degree from Stanford. Yeah. What do your grandkids call you? Oh, Papa or whatever. I want to show a human element and then go, Brian, when you say things like gay Gestapo, you really hurt people. You don't seem like the kind of guy that would want to hurt people. Why do you want to hurt people? And of course, he gets crap for going on the Atheist show, and I get it for, I catch a lot of shit from Christians going, I can't believe you gave that guy a platform. And I'm like, I think Brian Fisher has plenty of a platform if he wants it. My show's about dialogue and tackling tough ideas with respect. That's all I ever want to be about. And you know what? If you don't like that, stop listening. Yeah. I don't. Maybe that's why my downloads go down, because I tell them to stop listening.
Because you end every show with stop listening. I remember you were like, thanks, Dave, for coming on, and for you guys, stop listening.
Stop listening to this shit. What is wrong with you? That's what I say at the end of every show.
So you mentioned sort of a little bit of the intolerance or the shift that you've seen in the atheist community, and I wasn't involved in it for that long, but I've seen a little bit of that, a sense of that as well. Do you think when, I don't know how familiar you are with the arguments of Jordan Peterson, but sort of the basic arguments that the atheist community or the secular community at large, it's missing something to unite it. Like it's missing the grandiose stories that actually transcend just sort of the literal world in front of us. And that's why, for me, this isn't what he says, but like Star Wars has meaning to me, and I've learned some truths out of Star Wars and some ideas that aren't just the little secular world ideas,
Yeah. So speaking
he'll tell you that he references the story of Pinocchio, or biblical stories also, and he is Christian.
So I'm gonna put out a new idea here right now, and I'm gonna change what I've been saying. I'm going off script. Is that okay?
For this.
This whole time I've been reading that teleprompter.
You like that
teleprompter
right
behind you. Yeah, I've been reading that. I was saying everything you wanted me to say. Right now, I'm not going to say it. First of all, Jordan Peterson, he said he's going to come on my show after the end of the year.
Nice.
Or so sometime January, February. I hope to have him in the studio, or at least on Skype or something. But I've been sort of this activist within the activist community saying, guys, let's not kill the atheist community. Let's not kill the secular movement. And anytime you call for peace, which is what my Christian guest told me just last night, anytime you call for peace, you tend to be the target of violence and the target of hate at the very least. And that's what's happened. When I go, hey, Nazis, you should probably do a DNA test. It's silly for you to think you have pure anything. White people, are definitely not 100% Homo sapien. We've got something else in us. Just do a test. You have nothing to be proud of. And then on the other side, it's hey, maybe we shouldn't punch the people who are wrong about DNA. Maybe we should just say, hey guys, here's a DNA test, or here's some data, and try to find a reasonable one in the group that you can just change that one person's mind. I'm not saying they're lighting crosses on fire and you're trying to show them science, and that's not what I'm saying. I get the need for protest. I get the need for civil disobedience. I understand it's effective. But when you say maybe we shouldn't hit them, then you get attacked. But I'll say this, I think the mistake is, and the mistake that I've been making, I just released a YouTube video called Eating Our Own, How You Can Save the Atheist Movement. And it's actually a friend of mine, Seth Andrews, did it on his channel, The Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And so he put the video out, and so I just months ago, I put out this idea, we should save our movement. And I'm gonna change that now. Because you mentioned this, and I'm answering your question. I know this is a long way around.
No, I'm with you.
The answer is, I think the mistake is thinking that we need to be united. Atheism isn't a religion. We have no rituals, we have no beliefs, we have no set or guideline you need to follow. It's simply, the movement itself is simply, at its core, about the separation of church and state. That's it. Secular Coalition for America, wonderful organization. They come on my show all the time. They go lobby U.S. Congress in D.C. for laws and for, hey, maybe if it's going to be sex education, it should be science-based. Let's get rid of abstinence only. It doesn't work. Here are the stats. That's what they do. That's what the atheist community is actually about. But due to identity politics, intersectionality, now it's become about, these conferences end up being completely social justice oriented. That's fine if you want to have a social justice conference, do that. But don't call it an atheist conference and then make it all about social justice, right? So I think the more we try to unite on certain issues, the more we find differences and reasons to divide. So for me, it's about just backing out of it and going, guys, there's only one thing we agree on, that we don't see enough evidence for a God and that our government shouldn't take sides. So how about we just back up, stop drilling down into specific issues, back up and say, if I can find an ally in Dennis Prager, or in Adam Carolla, or in Tucker Carlson, or in Ben Shapiro, to say, yeah, maybe we shouldn't teach religion, maybe we shouldn't teach Bible study in public school, and maybe the 10 Commandments shouldn't be at the courthouse. Why not reach across that aisle and embrace that allyship? Because that's what it's about. The more we try to force people to unite over identity politics and intersectionality, the more we're eating our own. So I think that the issue is we have the theme already, and we've tried to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, it's a great answer. When I was at the Reason Rally, were you there last year?
I met you at the Reason Rally, Dave.
You told me that last
Thank you.
I've met a lot of people.
That's okay. I understand I'm not that
probably
important.
drinking a lot. I was around a lot of atheists. No, okay, we did meet there. So, but do you remember there was this whole controversy about that they didn't want certain speakers and people were angry at everybody and deplatforming people. And I remember all these people were fighting in there. They said there wasn't enough diversity and all this stuff. And I remember all these people fighting and people kept saying, Dave, what are you going to say about all this? Blah, blah. And I went up there and I gave my speech and I gave it exactly as I planned. And I said to everybody, I didn't even know you were going to say this 6 months later, but I took basically what you just said there. I said, let's continue being the tolerant people. Let's not be the ones that deplatform. Let's do all these things. I don't know if, I guess it didn't
work, Dave.
But you know, it's interesting how deep all of this goes, because so Dawkins I interviewed last month. It was one of the greatest moments of my professional career. Certainly you've interviewed him.
He's funny.
He was funny. I mean, there were a lot.
You don't think comedian, like I was actually doing comedy at the Reason Rally. I try to put myself out there as a comic. I do comedy here in LA all the time. I don't think of Dawkins as a comedian, but he's hilarious.
Why don't we do a stand-up show together or something? I've been sort of getting back in a little bit.
Have you?
I had Richard Lewis on last week.
Nice.
And it's like really kind of, I keep bouncing back in a little bit, but I need like something to click. So I
have a solid 10. I can do it right now. I can do it right now.
I used to have a messy 45. Now I don't know what I have.
I had an ugly 30 and I got it down to a solid 10.
To a solid 10. Yeah. We should do something. All right, we'll talk about that after.
Let's do it.
But one thing that I think shows how sort of pervasive the SJW stuff is that, so I interviewed Dawkins and he spent a decent amount of time talking about what he thought was wrong with the Trump supporters and all that. And I think in and of itself that's fine. But what hit me was, those are not the people trying to deplatform him. And I thought it was a really interesting thing. So like he has a frustration with these type of people who voted for Trump. Okay, I get it. There's obviously an anti-science bent to a lot of people in that crew, and certainly to some of Trump's appointments and all that, without question. But I thought that he was focusing on them instead of the people who were actually out there trying to deplatform him and get him off, atheist panels and to speak at universities. I thought it shows how even the smartest of us, and I consider this guy like at the top of that thing, he's right there if he ain't the top, that we all sort of aim our fire in weird ways that doesn't make sense all the time.
Yeah.
Does that jive with you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm right there with you. And when I talked to him, we specifically talked about how he is avoiding certain topics now. Because I said, one of my questions was, what can we do in our part of the world to help the Muslim countries that are oppressing women from driving and all these other things? And he's like, David, I tried once. And they were like, how dare you tell this culture what's better for them? And he's like, I'm asking for equality. He's like, and I just got so much, so I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. So he tries to aim it, and then
even
you
that,
get redirected.
Think how scary that proposition though is. If a guy like Dawkins, who we have nothing but love and admiration for, if he has to feel that he has to shift a little bit because he doesn't want to deal with fallout, and we certainly know about Sam Harris and plenty of the others, that then you can see why these conversations never really happen, because we're just people at the end of the day. Like everyone can deal with a certain amount of heat, and then I think that's why actually very early within 10 minutes of the sit down with Dawkins, it was obvious to me he wanted to do science, and I pretty much shelved all the religious stuff, and I was like, you know what? The book is called Science and the Soul. That's what we're going to talk about. Interesting word, soul, for a non-believer to use.
Right.
But that we all can only take so much heat. Even the best of us.
Yeah, and I found, because I was sort of getting into this idea of trying to respond to the trolls and go, guys, that's not what I said, but I didn't say that. And at one point I think I put on Facebook should really create an emoji for I didn't say that. And that would save us a lot of time, because this basic concept, what's called Rappaport's rules. If you can't clearly state your opposition's position back to them in a way that they would agree and say, that's exactly what I mean, you're not ready to form an argument against it. But so many people on social media will go on this attack not even understanding. So he'll make a statement, and then immediately there's hate, and he has to spend the next 20 minutes going, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. And at one point I've seen him say, if you think that's what I said, you need to go away and learn how to think. Like he just gets so frustrated with
them. But the idea that someone of Richard Dawkins' intellect is dealing with the anonymous troll is such a mind warp, really. Yeah, and it's funny, because throughout this there's been this theme about what's happening on social media and how that's affecting people and all that. And I always feel when I'm talking about it, it's either a little too insider baseball or we're focusing on it in a way that maybe the audience isn't.
And they're going to know, we're getting to them.
But you know what though? I actually think that a lot of this shit is now leaking into reality.
Yeah, it is.
And that's why I think it's worth talking about, because all of those conversations that used to just exist online are now leaking out into reality everywhere, from Trump to NFL athletes to everywhere. So it's like we can't ignore it, even if it's frustrating.
My wife, Brandy, she posted the other day, she saw for the first time a Lamborghini Aventador. She saw it in LA.
Okay.
She came home and she's like, honey, I fell in love with the sexiest car. I'm going to leave you for this car if it ever lets me. Like, this thing's amazing. Like, what was it? She started describing it, and I said, that sounds like a Lamborghini Aventador. And I Googled it, pulled it up, and she's like, that's it. And I was pretty proud of myself based on the sound and the description. I was like, I think I got it.
Wow.
And we both fell in love. So we've been watching videos about it and all this other thing. So she posted on Facebook the other day this picture of this car and goes, I love this car. It's absolutely beautiful. One of the first comments, should we really love a car? There are a lot of people out there that need love. There's a lot more things you could spend money on other than a damn Lamborghini. And it just happened. Nothing religious based, nothing politics based, just people at home just going, I have an opinion on your life.
Yeah.
It's just, and so you're right. I think a lot of people can relate to it, even if they're not content creators. You just put something out there, people they just inherently want to shit on it. And I don't know why. I don't get it.
Because it's gotten very easy to do.
It's so easy. I have a really good friend who said, you know those people in the back of the class that never used to say anything, now they have a megaphone.
Yeah.
And it's like, my opinions, and so I don't ever want to prevent someone from speaking up. I want people to talk and have their opinions heard, which I think social media can be a wonderful tool for that. Because the guy at the back of the class sometimes has the best idea. He's just quiet and shy, and now he gets to express himself. Mm-hmm. It can be good. But when those people turn into vile trolls and say their goal is to take down the mighty Richard Dawkins and just try to call him out for every little thing, on some level they think they're equating themselves with him, and like, now you're fighting Mike. I don't know if you were like this, but when I was a kid, the big thing was, would you get in the ring with Mike Tyson? $3 million for 30 seconds. That was our fear. Like, we didn't talk about.
Larry Spinks regrets it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Larry, is it Michael Spinks? Michael Spinks. Spinks.
Larry, who was the Larry? Now we look
Holmes.
Like Larry Holmes.
Larry Holmes, Michael Spinks. I combined them into one super boxer who probably got knocked out in 6 seconds anyway.
Who would probably get killed by Tyson, But that was our big thing. We were afraid of Mike Tyson. And so now it's on this way where you can go toe-to-toe with the Tyson of our day from the safety of your home. And then there's this weird part where sometimes I'll respond to someone and they'll be like, thank you for even responding. I didn't realize you were going to respond. I'm like, wait a minute, you just wanted me to show attention? I'm like, if that's on my level, I know it happens even greater on your level, and then on a monumental, exponentially high level on Richard Dawkins' level. And I'm like, I wonder if half of these people are just trying to get his attention to get him to respond, because maybe a spat on the nose is better than being ignored in some weird way.
And if they're just like, I like you, or thank you, you're like, whatever.
Yeah,
but like, go fuck this up.
Yeah, then it gets the attention. Yeah. And it's sad. It's really sad, because I think it's pushing public intellectuals away from communicating with people. And me being in a position where I have a platform, I want to get better at what I do. Well, how do I get better? By getting criticism. I want to take in the criticism and go, wow, they didn't like that I only did a 90-minute show. They like my shows being 3 hours. I'll go back to that. If I don't pay attention, I don't know what you like. But then again, sometimes when I pay attention, I get bogged down in these little rabbit hole fights that are senseless. So people like Sam Harris, people like Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss, Adam Carolla, they just don't look at it. They just walk away from Twitter, and then you're now losing a potential positive interaction with someone. Yeah. And so I don't get the idea of being nasty. You'll get much further if you try to emulate the behaviors that you see and grow your own audience, and that person will eventually respect you as a peer. Not attacking them, they're never going to respond. And then my favorite thing is they don't respond because they know I'm right. Yeah, Dave Rubin can't handle me. He won't respond because I'll own his ass. Yes, a friend of mine told me that about Sam Harris. He doesn't respond to me because I'll own his ass. And I went, that's it. He's terrified to talk to you. That's got to be it.
I was at, we got to wrap this up, but I was at a talk a couple months back it was Sam interviewing Dawkins here in LA. It was awesome. And this guy comes up at the end, they do the Q&A, and the guy comes up and he's like, I know the two of you won't fully be able to understand this, but, and then went into some just some insane, question about whatever. But I just thought, wow, what a funny way to present something.
How arrogant.
I got some knowledge. Bear with me while I talk to you.
I know Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, you won't be able to comprehend what I'm about to say.
Crazy.
To those two guys, too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the main takeaway here is that I'm going to keep trying to fight this the right way, as long as you will keep trying to fight it the right way. And give a little space for some of those public intellectuals to do the things that are going to make us look smarter. How about that?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's continue the conversation and embrace the nuance. That's what's missing right now. Embrace the nuance.
All right, and you know what? I will commit right now, while this is being recorded, to doing some sort of stand-up thing with you in LA.
Let's do it.
In the next month or two. Let's set something up.
Okay, we'll set it up.
All right. For more on David, check out the Dogma Debate podcast at dogmadebate.com.